All right, let's dive in. You guys sent in this super interesting source about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, right? A Chinese language video essay. I gotta say, I'm really curious what kind of perspective we're gonna get from that.
Oh, yeah, it definitely grabs your attention right off the bat. I mean, most of what we see about Oppenheimer focuses on the typical stuff. But this one goes into some pretty intriguing details. Like, did you know that Oppenheimer was fluent in, get this, 6 languages?
Thicker languages, wow. That's impressive.
Including Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, seriously, that's wild. I mean, I knew he was brilliant, but come on, what's the connection there? Like, it's not like he needed Sanskrit to build a bomb,
So
right?
that's where the source gets really interesting. It kind of suggests that Oppenheimer's, his language skills weren't just some like party trick or whatever. They actually played a pretty crucial role in his success, especially during the Manhattan Project.
I could see that.
You got to imagine, right, leading this team of like the most brilliant scientists from all over the world, each with their own jargon, their own cultural nuances, right?
Oh, right.
Oppenheimer being able to just like navigate all of that
Oh, yeah.
to bridge those gaps. I mean, that must have been huge for fostering collaboration, right? In a way that most people just couldn't.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He wasn't just a genius. He was like a master communicator on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this video essay is painting a more, well, nuanced picture of Oppenheimer than we usually get, I guess. What else does it dive into?
Well, it also spends some time on Oppenheimer's early life, the things that kind of shaped his path. So he was born in 1904 into a wealthy Jewish family in New York City. And his parents really instilled in him this like deep love of learning. So he excelled in a ton of subjects, not just physics.
So a bit of a Renaissance man then?
Oh, yeah, very much so. But there's this one moment, this pivotal moment when he meets Niels Bohr,
Oh, wow.
the renowned Danish physicist.
Yeah.
Bohr was like a pioneer in quantum mechanics, this revolutionary theory that was like totally upending the world of physics at the time. It gets pretty complex, but essentially, quantum mechanics deals with how matter and energy behave at the atomic and subatomic levels, and it's not nearly as neat and tidy as the everyday world we experience.
Right.
Things get weird.
Yeah, things get weird down there. I'm starting to see why someone like Oppenheimer, with his broad interests, would be drawn to this. But how did meeting Bohr actually, shape his career?
Well, Bohr's ideas really had a profound effect on Oppenheimer. It kind of steered him away from experimental physics and more towards the theoretical side.
Okay.
You see, Oppenheimer was really known for his deep thinking, his ability to grasp these really abstract concepts, and also, by his own admission, he was kind of clumsy in the lab.
Uh-huh. So not exactly a hands-on kind of guy then.
Yeah. Not really. He really found his calling in theoretical physics, where he could, explore all the mind-boggling implications of quantum mechanics. And this, as we'll see, this really set the stage for his involvement in one of the most consequential scientific endeavors in human history, the Manhattan Project.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The race to build the atomic bomb. And this video essay, it takes a different angle on that story, right?
It does. It really dives into the international intrigue that was swirling around the project.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights this intense rivalry between the Allied and German scientists. And in particular, it focuses on Werner Heisenberg,
Oh, wow.
a brilliant German physicist who was basically Oppenheimer's counterpart on the other side.
Talk about high stakes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a scientific thriller playing out on a global stage.
Oh, absolutely. And the source really emphasizes how uniquely qualified Oppenheimer was to lead the American effort. I mean, first and foremost, he was an American citizen, right?
Right.
And that was crucial for a project of this magnitude and sensitivity.
Yeah.
But then you also have his Jewish heritage. That fueled his absolute determination to defeat the Nazis, whose atrocities were just escalating at this alarming rate.
Right.
And then you add in his language skills, right? He could communicate effectively with this incredibly diverse team of scientists. I mean, that's essential for such a complex and collaborative undertaking.
Yeah. So it sounds like he was way more than just like a scientific brain, right? Like he was this skilled communicator, a leader, someone who's deeply driven by the events of the time.
Exactly. And don't forget, the Manhattan Project wasn't just about physics. I mean, it involved chemistry, engineering, countless other disciplines, right?
Right.
And Oppenheimer's, his broad knowledge base, it allowed him to oversee this vast complexity and keep everyone focused on the ultimate goal.
All right. So we have this brilliant, complex individual, fluent in multiple languages. leading a top-secret race to develop the most powerful weapon the world had ever seen. I mean, where do we even go from here?
Well, this is where the story takes, I think, a really dramatic turn. The source goes on to describe the Trinity Test, the first detonation of an atomic bomb. And it paints a vivid picture of the sheer destructive power that was unleashed that day. And it explores Oppenheimer's reaction, which was, it was this mixture of awe and this profound unease.
Oh, I can only imagine the weight of that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, this must be where that famous quote comes in, right?
Yeah.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
You've got it. It's such a chilling line, and the source reveals it's deeply connected to the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu scripture that Oppenheimer had studied quite extensively.
Right.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into his internal struggle, the way that he was grappling with the moral implications of his work.
Yeah. Okay, so we're starting to see like the cracks in the facade, right?
Yeah.
The man behind the myth. And I'm guessing this is just the beginning of Oppenheimer's inner turmoil, right?
You could say that. And the source also suggests that things get even more complicated when you look at the decision to actually use the bomb against Japan. There are some pretty unsettling insights there, hinting at motivations beyond just, ending the war.
Oh, okay. This is definitely getting into some murky territory. It sounds like this deep dive is going to be a real eye-opener.
It certainly is. Buckle up, because Oppenheimer's story, it's far from over.
Okay, so we left off with Oppenheimer, kind of grappling with the weight of what he created and those hints about the decision to use the bomb. This video essay, it really digs into the aftermath, right?
Oh, it does. The source really gets into how Oppenheimer's whole perspective kind of shifted after, witnessing that destructive power he helped unleash.
Right.
He became like a really vocal advocate for nuclear non-proliferation, especially against developing the hydrogen bomb, which would have been even more powerful.
I mean, yeah, that seems like a natural progression, right? Like someone who understands the science and the stakes maybe better than anyone else would want to prevent even more destruction.
You'd think so, right? But you got to remember, this is the Cold War, the Red Scare.
Oh, right.
And the essay, it points out this irony, Oppenheimer, the guy who helped America win World War II, is now considered a security risk because of his past associations with, get this, communists.
Wait, hold on. Are we saying the father of the atomic bomb was suspected of being a communist? I mean, what even led to that?
It's not as simple as, Oppenheimer himself being a communist. The source kind of lays out how some of his friends, even his wife, held, leftist political views. And this, coupled with his outspoken stance against the hydrogen bomb, it made him a target for those who wanted to discredit him.
So it's like amidst all the Cold War paranoia, his past and his present opinions, they collided, made him an easy scapegoat.
Exactly. And the source, it really gets into the investigations and hearings that ultimately led to Oppenheimer's security clearance being revoked in 1954, which, essentially ended his career right at its peak.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of how fear and political maneuvering can just derail even, the most brilliant minds.
It's almost Shakespearean, like a tragic fall from grace for someone who dedicated his life to, science and to his country.
Yeah.
So what happened after his security clearance was revoked? Did he just fade away?
Not entirely. He couldn't directly influence policy anymore, obviously, but Oppenheimer continued to lecture and write about, the philosophical and ethical implications of science. The source kind of suggests he saw this period as a time for reflection, like really grappling with the consequences of his work and advocating for a more peaceful world.
Sounds like a man trying to, I don't know, make amends, trying to find some meaning beyond the shadow of the bomb.
Yeah, I think so. And there was a glimmer of redemption. In 1963, President Kennedy decided to award Oppenheimer the Enrico Fermi Award.
Wow, the Enrico Fermi Award.
Yeah, it's a really prestigious honor given for lifetime achievement in nuclear science.
That must have been huge for him, like a kind of official recognition after years of being, pushed aside.
Oh, absolutely. It was seen as this symbolic attempt to acknowledge his contributions and maybe even, I don't know, atone for the way he'd been treated.
Yeah.
Sadly, Kennedy was assassinated before he could actually, personally give Oppenheimer the award.
Oh, wow.
And Oppenheimer himself died just 4 years later from throat cancer.
That's heartbreaking. A bittersweet ending to a life that was I mean, it was filled with such highs and lows.
Yeah.
There's one more thing from this video essay I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
It mentioned a possible connection between Oppenheimer and something called the Akashic Records.
Oh, right.
What are those exactly, and how do they fit into all of this?
This is where the source gets really intriguing.
Yeah.
The Akashic Records are this concept that's found in a bunch of different spiritual traditions.
Okay.
And they're thought of as a universal library containing, the history of every soul and every event that's ever occurred.
Okay, that sounds pretty out there. Was Oppenheimer some kind of mystic or something?
Not in the traditional sense. I mean, the source isn't suggesting that Oppenheimer literally accessed this, mystical archive.
Right.
It's using the Akashic Records more as a metaphor to describe his remarkable intuition and insight.
Okay.
Remember, Oppenheimer was envisioning aspects of the quantum world long before technology allowed us to actually observe them, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like he was tapping into this deep well of knowledge, even if it wasn't a literal library in some other dimension.
Right. So it was more about highlighting how extraordinary his mind was.
Yeah.
That he could intuit things about the universe that were decades ahead of their time.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what else he might have achieved, if he hadn't been caught in the crosshairs of all that Cold War politics.
Yeah.
We've covered Oppenheimer's journey from, scientific triumph to personal tragedy, but there's still more to unpack, right?
Well,
We need to really understand what his legacy means for us today. So join us for the final part of this deep dive, where we'll examine the lasting impact of Oppenheimer's life and work. We've been on quite a journey with J. Robert Oppenheimer, from his incredible intellect and leadership during the Manhattan Project to his later advocacy and tragic fall from grace. It's a story with so many twists and turns. But as fascinating as the historical details are, I'm also really interested in what this video essay reveals about Oppenheimer as a person, right? What were his flaws, and did they contribute to his downfall in any way?
That's a really great point. And while the source definitely, celebrates Oppenheimer's brilliance, it doesn't shy away from some of his, less admirable qualities. For example, it mentions that he could be pretty arrogant and dismissive, especially towards people he considered intellectually inferior.
So kind of a classic case of brilliant but difficult. I mean, I guess that's not uncommon among, geniuses.
True. And it's important to remember that this was a man who, really thrived in the world of ideas, not necessarily in the world of politics and social maneuvering. The source kind of suggests that he may have underestimated the forces that were arrayed against him during those security hearings.
Right. I mean, he was a deep thinker, not a political strategist. It seems like he was more concerned with, unraveling the mysteries of the universe than navigating the complexities of human relationships.
Yeah, and there's another point the source brings up, Oppenheimer's his tendency to compartmentalize. It suggests that he could, separate his scientific work from its ethical implications, almost as if those two realms existed in different parts of his mind.
That's really fascinating. He could get so laser focused on solving a scientific puzzle that he kind of lost sight of the bigger picture, the human consequences of his discoveries.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, we can't get inside his head. But the source really encourages us to consider these complexities. It's not about, labeling Oppenheimer as a hero or a villain. It's about understanding the interplay of, brilliance and flaws that shaped his life.
And ultimately his legacy. I mean, it's this blend of light and shadow that makes Oppenheimer such a compelling figure, don't you think?
Absolutely. He's not easily categorized, and I think that's what makes him so human, so relatable, despite his, his extraordinary intellect.
It strikes me that this deep dive it's not just about historical facts. It's about grappling with the complexities of human nature, right? The choices we make, the unintended consequences that can just ripple through history.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so we've talked about his strengths, his weaknesses, his triumphs, his tragedies, but there's one question that keeps nagging at me, and it's something the source it hints at it but doesn't explicitly answer. Did Oppenheimer ever regret his role in creating the atomic bomb?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while the source doesn't give us a definitive answer, it does highlight Oppenheimer's profound ambivalence, right? I mean, he was clearly proud of the scientific achievement of, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. But he was also deeply troubled by the bomb's destructive potential, by the death and suffering it could inflict. His famous quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I mean, it speaks volumes about his internal conflict.
It's such a haunting quote. You can almost feel the weight of that realization, right?
Yeah.
The burden he carried for the rest of his life. Do you think that burden ultimately contributed to his downfall?
It's certainly possible. I mean, imagine the psychological toll of knowing that you played a key role in creating a weapon that could wipe out entire cities, and
Hmm.
then to have your loyalty questioned, your patriotism doubted after all you'd sacrificed.
It's a truly Shakespearean tragedy, isn't it?
Yeah.
A brilliant mind driven by, these noble intentions,
Yeah.
ultimately undone by the very forces he helped unleash.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels to those classic tragic figures, men of great power and intellect brought down by their own flaws and the fickle hand of fate.
Well, I think we've done a pretty thorough job unpacking this complex and fascinating figure. We've explored his early life, his pivotal role in the Manhattan Project, the ethical dilemmas he faced, and the tragic arc of his later years. We even touched on his possible connection to the Akashic Records, which, while likely metaphorical, speaks to the depth and breadth of his intellect.
Yeah, it's been a truly insightful deep dive.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. What do you think Oppenheimer would say about the world today? About, the state of nuclear proliferation, about the role of science in society? Would he be hopeful?
Pessimistic.
Yeah.
I think it's a question worth pondering, and one that I think can really enrich our understanding of this complex and enigmatic figure.
I couldn't agree more. Oppenheimer's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also a reminder of, the power of human ingenuity, the importance of ethical reflection, and the enduring need to grapple with the consequences of our actions.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. And to our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time.